this isn't people making love. This isn't people who are choosing together making love. This is whatever you're doing in the service of a drama, be it on TV, film, or in the theatre. These are characters, and the intimate content has been written by the writer because it's telling us something.
Well, hi, Ita. Welcome to Director's Notes.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for asking me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
I'm over the moon. I've read your book, I devoured it, and obviously I've been following everything you do. I am a huge advocate for intimacy coordination. It's now something I find myself. I was watching Industry the other day, and there was an episode, and after the episode, I didn't want to see who directed it. I wanted to see who the intimacy coordinator was on it.
Very good.
So that's how much I'm sort of looking for it in different fields. And you've done some incredible work, and I'm sure we'll get into some of it. But we've done Normal People, I May Destroy You, It's a Sin, Sex Education,
Industry.
and Industry. There we go. Well, I might have found that in my research. And obviously, you've just had a book published. So, Intimacy, a field to finding connection and feeling your deep desires.
That's right. That's right. Had the joy of being offered to write this book, and it's taking what I've learned, my inspiration from the intimacy onset guidelines and how it's impacted how we can engage with the intimate content, and realizing that actually the fundamental tenets of open communication, agreement and consent, clear choreography and closure is absolutely a wonderful tool to bring into our own lives.
Yeah, I mean it's for everyone. And I've been talking to a lot of my friends about this and sort of intimacy coordination, and then they're like, well, that's just for the professional fields, for work. I'm like, no, it's for everything. And I think what I found in your book and what I was struck by is that whilst it's been influenced by your work and what you do, it is applicable to so many different areas of life. And I think that is something we all need.
Yay, thank you. That's so lovely. And again, so for me, just that thing of just fundamentally in our lives, open communication
Yeah.
is that first step, is such a biggie. And that realization that actually open communication means, first of all, taking responsibility for yourself. So you're thinking about, what do I want so I can communicate this? But then once you then sort of have a life with your relationship that you do work from communicating openly, then you can engage with anything. And actually can be really supportive for all walks of life, sort of, whether you're going to, what you're going to eat for dinner, right the way through to if you're going to have children or not, to navigating being a parent. That's a bigger shift, just throughout your life.
Yeah.
But then also the fact that once you open that open communication, actually, well, first of all, that realization that it's a big shift, that we all have various reasons why we don't talk about things, and it comes from our upbringing, our culture, possibly our religion. And so it's quite, can be quite easy to say, great, that flipped to open communication and transparency. But I am really aware that then just that step can be a huge step for people, and that takes work.
Yeah.
And in a way, sort of the difference in the industry is that and this is what, again, I've engaged with delivering the intimacy onset guidelines and supporting intimate content, is, again, just because the intimacy guidelines are there doesn't suddenly mean that everybody can talk openly about it. People, again, in all walks of life, have their different relationships with how they engage with intimacy, and so that's also what you're navigating, the unspoken, uncomfortableness, or people's different places. So that's in the industry, but in our own lives, just offering, actually, if we lift the lid and take responsibility, to take ownership, and the fact that we are in a world where, when I was a kid, being born in the 1960s, the attitude to sex was still so Victorian. And there has been a wonderful shift, and now and then the pill was a huge part of that, and
Yeah.
that idea of female pleasure and opening out, and then that continued journey to understanding more about female anatomy and our female hormonal journey through life, into the menopause that's been so important, with wonderful people like Davina McCall and Mariella Frostrop championing, come on, let's talk about this, it's natural, it's normal, half of the population is going to go through this, and what does it mean, what does it give us? So the lid has been lifted in that way, and so I'm inviting, and now that it has, let's look at how we can engage with our joy, with our pleasure, around our embodiment, around our sensuality and sexuality, and just giving some tools in order, from my embodied practice, to
Yeah.
how we can really connect with ourselves and enjoy living a life of luscious sensuousness. And then, what that will give you, and then it's your choice to take that into your sexual relationships,
Yeah.
should you so wish.
Yeah. It's just, yeah, I completely agree with everything you just said. So just to give a little background, maybe for people who aren't completely aware, because you sort of, I would put you synonymous with the first time I started hearing about intimacy coordinators, and I think that's true for a lot of people. So give us a little bit of background, where you came from, how it came to be, because it's all relatively new, speaking about the whole industry.
That's right. So, my background is I've got very strict Irish Catholic parents, who are, I was brought up in Bromley. My mum's from Cookstown, County Tyrone in the north of Ireland, and my dad is from Clonmel and Tipperary in the south. Um, and my mum wanted me to go to Irish dancing classes, but there wasn't any, so she sent me to ballet at the age of 3, and then
Very
happened to
similar.
very similar, yes. Um, and then I was so fortunate that the school that I went to had this most amazing lady called Madeline Sharp, who had taught Beryl Gray in the 1930s, the
Oh,
most
wow.
beautiful, elegant, ballet teacher, who was the Royal Academy of Dancing's top children's teacher. So I happened to have that training anyway. So I worked professionally as a musical theatre dancer for 10 years in my 20s. And then I went to Bristol Vic, retrained as an actor, worked it for 8 years as an actor. And then when my kids were young, I was looking at what I can do when I'm out of work, and found the MA in Movement Studies at Central School of Speech and Drama. So from 2007, I started teaching movement to actors and movement directing. And then I also wrote my own work. So I put on my own play in 2009 called April's Fool. And then I was looking at taking that further. And what I was doing was extracting and taking the dynamic of the perpetrator and the victim. I was very inspired by the Forgiveness Project, and the restorative justice, and looking at the flip sides of the people on the flip sides of a conflict.
Okay.
And in that place, I was thinking, how do I hold a really safe rehearsal space when I'm asking my actors to come and explore possibly challenging material? And that was my inspiration. And I put on 1 week long R&D, research and development, in at Central School of Speech and Drama in the summer of 2014, and then I did a second year at the Barbican Pit in 2015. Which, if anybody's interested, you can see there's a 5-minute YouTube video called "Does My Sex Offend You?" Out there. Um, and I was teaching at many of the different drama schools, and it was Meredith Dufton, who's the head of movement at Mountview, said to me, "I'm suddenly having to note all these plays that my second and third years have got with intimate content. There is no professional structure, and you're creating a structure in order to create this work in a really conscious and present and professional way. Please come and teach what you're developing." So that was in April 2015. And
Mm.
then I also co-worked with, or mentored by, Vanessa Ewan, who had already had the inspiration of watching a fight rehearsal and going, "That's a structure that we need for intimacy." And she had written about that in her book. She was one of the main creators of the course and tutors at the MA in Movement Studies. So I co-worked with her, sort of bringing in, as it were, the container that I had created, and then the core of her inspiration of using how you create a fight to choreograph the intimate content. And from April 2015, it was the first term that I taught the work, and I sort of again made mistakes. I tried to do an intimate scene way too much. So again, just those mistakes and going, no, let's just do a kiss. That's enough. Anyway, so over the next year, I taught MA, BA actors, acting musicians, musical theatre, and then again, wonderful practice with Meredith, constantly reflecting, looking at what was working. And then it's the students that were saying to me, "This is great here," as it was getting established. What's happening in the industry? So that's why I started to take it to Equity in February 2017. And then I presented it to the group of agents in um, June of 2017. And they instantly were going, "Oh my goodness, we need this." And the stories that came out. And then, of course, in October 2017, Weinstein happened. And that shift in the industry, and then Equity called me in part of their preparation for creating their safe spaces, and I was able to share the intimacy onset guidelines that I had brought together. And then with the intention of the industry to do better, I had the opportunity within the codes of conduct that were being written, and the industry saying, yes, we've turned a blind eye, we now need to work with respect for everybody. And I'm going, yes, and within that, here is how you can work with the intimate content that continues or embeds that open communication and respect for everybody, so we can actually then work with the intimate content in a really safe way. And then 25th of April was the very first day I was employed as an intimacy coordinator, 2018. On sex education, I said to John Jennings and Ben Taylor, the best thing I can do is to run my day's workshop. So that's what we did. We had this groundbreaking day, and I was so aware, like everybody, producers, directors, DOPs, first, second, third ADs, and as many of the cast that were cast already, all sat around in a huge circle. And I always start with sharing, when's it been done well?
Yeah.
Is it not being done well? What do you want to equip yourself with? And then into the afternoon, up on its feet, I'd identified various different scenes. And some of the things, choreography that got created that afternoon made its way into the production. And that cast bounded out of there, a company, and with joy and with ease and with understanding, and they were then set to create what was this wonderful phenomenon
Yeah.
of sex education. So that was that. And then the next one was 2 weeks later was Gentleman Jack. So again, going into rehearsal with Saran Jones, Sally Wainwright, and all the cast, and again a rehearsal day talking about the scenes. So that was up and running 2018.
Yeah. Some good sapphic love in Gentleman Jack.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And the research of her, both, being able to draw from her diaries, how she spoke about the intimate content, working with Anne Chomer, the expert historian. So again, that was so exciting. Both scripts were so different, but so absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously, Saran Jones's energy of embodying Gentleman Jack is just so phenomenal. With Sophie Rundle as her lover,
Yeah.
and those beautiful intimate scenes, and again, how groundbreaking Anne Lister was, as has been dubbed the first modern lesbian.
Yeah.
Incredible.
So much. There's so much there. So, I mean, it's phenomenal, sort of, I think, what you've accomplished in a short time and how quickly everything's moved. And, it breaks my heart that Weinstein and everything, the Me Too movement had to push it up a gear. But regardless of the reasons, we're here, we're talking about it. And as we were discussing, I interviewed Elle McAlpine, who I know is a fabulous intimacy coordinator now. And I've been, to film festivals, and I've sat on panels, and I speak to directors about it all the time. But one thing I wanted to ask you is, I know it's not regulated yet, is it? And I know you've got the intimacy set guidelines, which are fabulous. But I'd love to know what you saw in, like, Elle, for example, that knew you could nurture her to this, and the problem you're finding with a lot of people thinking, well, I can do that, and how that's negatively affecting the role.
Um, so, and as we spoke about, I had the joy at that point of meeting Elle and Kat, who've created EK Intimacy. I'm so proud of everything that they are doing and have done, and how they operate in the industry.
Yeah.
Um, I was in that period of teaching movement to actors. I was teaching movement on the MA acting course at Drama Centre,
Mhm.
and they were two of the students on that. And when I started trying to demonstrate, or been asked to demonstrate, how the intimacy onset guidelines worked in 2017, and then I sort of also got asked to make a short film. So it showed, how the guidelines worked in the industry. My students, the people who really knew and understood my work were the people that I asked to be the people that demonstrated it, and obviously then I had taught them a year's worth of embodied
Yeah.
actor movement. So also they understood my, that, or I had, helped support them in developing their actor movement training. So they were amongst the people who were the first people that I was sharing the work constantly, And then gradually, as work started to come, as more productions started to come in, then those lovely people, including Kat and Elle, were the people who knew the work the best,
Yeah.
than myself. But for me, it is about understanding and having the skills of that acting is an embodied art, and it
Mm.
is about physical transformation, and it's bringing the detail and the skill of that, and the way it's the skill of the movement director, into understand that's what underpins, then take lifting the physical storytelling of the intimate content, um, and so that's what I'm looking for. I'm
Yeah.
looking for people who are fundamentally embodied practitioners, either really wonderful embodied actors or people who are movement directors. Um, and because it is lifting, and it's recognizing that this is physical storytelling.
Yeah.
So this was a few of the things that the myths in the place of the intimate content being the elephant in the room, the thing that wasn't spoken about. And again, as I've shared earlier, just acknowledging and really realizing the effects of just society, and who we are as beings, and where we are in our connection with who we are as human beings in the world, is that our connection with our sex and sexuality and intimacy is still so steeped and wrapped up in Victorian ideas and
Yep.
shame and guilt. And then this lack of understanding of fundamental respect as human beings. And this is where um I really feel for our young boys and men, and in a way just the dynamic between the masculine and the feminine, and this confusion about I feel there's a confusion of how men feel that they can be in this idea of how they can still be in their masculinity, how they can still be in their testosterone,
Mm.
um, and be men and not be overpowering and overbearing. And then of course some men choose to be coercive and abusive. Um, but I really would, and bad practice comes from that. So with all of
Mm.
that going on, before the intimacy on set guidelines, no professional structure by which to engage with this body dance.
Yeah.
Whereas the body dance of a fight, you had those practitioners, you had fight directors and stunt coordinators to give a structure, to talk openly, to teach skills, and then to choreograph. You
Mm.
have wonderful choreography of a dance, and I always use Baz Luhrmann's Roxanne because I love it so much from Moulin Rouge. This wonderful telling of a story with such passion. Those dancers and that tango, oh my God, it just gets me every time. And then you and Rebecca coming in. Anyway, so that has its impact, but again, you have your practitioner. It's lifted to the art of a dance and song to heighten that storytelling. And again, the creative journey of the choreographer with Baz Luhrmann. She gets together with her dancers. You teach them. Then you get all your supporting dancers, and you teach your main cast. So there's a clear forum. Then that's what we've brought with the intimate content that wasn't there before.
Yeah.
And this confusion again in not speaking about the intimate content. And I was thinking about some actors going, oh, but if you choreograph it, then how we're going to take away the spontaneity. And again, the difference is with these, this isn't people making love. This isn't people who are choosing together making love. This is whatever you're doing in the service of a drama, be it on TV, film, or in the theatre. These are characters,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
the intimate content has been written by the writer because it's telling us something
Yeah.
about these characters in their intimate relationship. And just like a good song goes from, you might have dialogue, and you can't do anything but burst into song, or, a good musical, you can't do anything but burst into song and dance, or the fight, you get angry, you can't do anything but then throw a punch. That's what we're doing with the intimate content, the
Yeah.
gaze, touch, frisson, playfulness, until you can't do anything but release into touch, sensuality, sexuality, if it's a loving scene, or abuse, if it's, a challenging intimate scene. It is a body dance. And just as you need a choreographer to teach skills for a dance, just as you need a stunt coordinator, a fight director to teach skills for a fight, so you need
Yeah.
a practitioner to teach skills and choreograph, to know anatomy, to know about rhythm, to know about physical storytelling, about character transformation. We don't want to see, who this person is in their natural lived life, in their sexuality. You want to see the depiction of who these characters are. and what it's telling us about these characters, and then those characters in relationship and how they are in their sexuality, that tells us something about them. And you need, and then so that needs communication, it needs artistic rifting and imagination, it needs the direct, and again the shift with this work, it allows the director to rift, to be creative, to be excited, to be elsewhere, and then opening out the creative conversation with your actors, allowing them and inviting them to take responsibility, to bring their ideas, to have that conversation. And again, that's where we as the intimacy coordinators at that stage, it's so important. It comes from there.
Yeah.
It comes from that actor-director conversation, that them sitting, talking, rifting, exploring, deciding, making decisions about, okay, what is this? And only then will we bring it on our feet, and we're listening and we're being present. And again, as body practitioners, I'm watching an actor. I'm watching when they're talking about it, where the impulse is coming from. Are they sat in their chair and they're talking about this character right down in their groin? Are they coming from their heart? Is there, so I'm looking at all of that, because I want to support an actor to be who they are creatively, so that you're not imposing something on them, but you're observing, and then you're lifting what their inspiration, you're lifting what they have decided. And then that's where we bring the skills of the techniques and anchoring and rhythm and giving a really clear choreographic frame.
Yeah.
So that's what we bring. Sorry, just to and the thing is that in the preparation, we've it's all been done before we ever get to set.
Mm-hmm.
You've had that conversation, and if it's a simulated sex scene, we've had a rehearsal, and then the actors know what it is, and then either the DOP will come in and see it, or I'll write out the choreography and I'll share it with them, or I'll video it, and with the cast agreement and consent, that video will be shared with perhaps just the direction of the DOP, so they can make their shot list. So by the time you get to set, perhaps we can just refine the choreography, and again, just supporting producers and that awareness of cheap time. We don't want to spend time rehearsing a scene on set, because it's a body dance.
Yeah.
Any body dance takes time. Let's rehearse it beforehand, and then literally takes a minute. Let's refine that choreography, and then they're away. So we stand back, and then the actor is free, because they know what they're bringing character-wise. They're bringing all of their skill, and we're supporting in all the different ways that we support on set. And people look at it, like I have, a costume person might go, oh, I support all the intimate scenes all the time, so I can do that. And it's like, no, bodies, fabric, costume, character expression through clothes. But are you an embodied practitioner? No. I had a second AD who said, oh, my mum's a chaperone for kids. She's watched what you do. She could do what you do. So there's a lot of confusion, and yeah, and that's where I'm continuing to really champion what the skill is that we bring, and so then therefore what the industry should be asking for of their intimacy practitioners.
Yes.
Very long-winded.
No, it was long-winded, but everything you were saying, I felt the passion. I felt everything you've experienced. And this is something that I've found myself in conversations with a lot of time, and with either directors or actors. A lot of people who might sit in the therapy kind of world are thinking, oh, I can do this. But what you're talking about is knowing movement, knowing choreography. And I think this is the thing that people need to learn. It's not psychological. Yes, there's a part of it, but it's a performance. It's a story, and that's what needs to be held at the center of it as well.
That's right, and it's supporting the actor in their process,
Yeah.
the director in their process, to
Yeah.
tell this character emotional, psychological, and physical story. And again, that's where the skill comes in, and that's that everybody has their different process, and and everyone has their different way, and the amount of support that they need in order to be able to show up on the day on set. And again, I said that's what the skill is you might have number one cast, who's also the executive producer, who's had a hand in writing the whole thing, who will also will be sat in the editing chair because they're executive producer, and they'll be part. So they are so empowered. And they might be doing this intimate scene with a day player.
Yeah.
Who's straight out of drama school, who's absolutely quaking in their boots, and they're going, oh, I'm going to be working with this person, so there's so much. So the support that I will give for each of those two performers will be so different. The amount of contact that I will have will be so different, depending on what's required and what they need. That is hard. I should tell you, Sarah, the amount of times that I absolutely nail it and get it right throughout a whole production, I would say is pretty much zero. You know, because that's what you're navigating. You're navigating how each person works.
Yeah.
You're navigating also not just the people who are able to know how they work and share it with you, but also you're navigating people's unconscious places of where they are at with their, perhaps with their connection with their bodies, with being able to really call their requirements regarding touch, regarding nudity. So that's where I can understand that, like a therapeutic person. So for example, if I say to someone, are you happy to be naked breasted? Are you happy to be naked nippled? And they'll go, and I'll go, okay, so what I'm observing is that you're instantly gone tight. You're going, you're looking to me. That's a definite maybe, stroke no. So, and again, regarding only working creatively with someone's freely given yes. So again, that aspect of consent, which is so wonderful that the intimacy guidelines have brought into the industry. You know, we say your yes is your yes, your no is your no, and your maybe is also a no.
Yeah.
And also that consent is a process, not a moment. Something that you've said no to, then it might become a yes, or something you've said a yes to might become a no. And that's hard, because as actors, we're taught to say yes, we're taught to shore up, shut up, put up, and just offer, and just say yes. And what this work is doing is actually lifting the lid off that and sort of going, actually, no, what actually we want to do for you, so that you can actually be the best of yourself in this intimate scene, is honor what is right for you personally.
Mm.
And that's been a big shift in the industry. So as the younger students are now coming out into the industry who have been having the intimacy guidelines taught to them as part of their fundamental creative process, they're coming
Amazing.
out with that autonomy. But you know, the amount of times that I'd have an actor in the early days saying, "Oh, I don't want to rehearse. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to make it more of a thing than it needs to be." And in all of that, I'm hearing that it is a thing.
Yes.
It is
Yeah.
still a thing. And where they wouldn't say, "Oh, I don't want to rehearse a fight. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to, I don't want to teach skills. I just want to do it." You know that you don't do that, but people don't have the same issues around that open communication around doing a fight as they do around whatever's going on for somebody with their intimate content. And again, it's not to make anybody wrong, but that's part of our skill, is how you listen to that.
Yeah.
And listening means what they say, the timbre of their voice while they're saying it, the words that they're choosing to say while they're saying it, what's happening in their body while they're saying it, and then translating all of that and going, okay, I notice that. Just reflecting back, and sort of, and again, I have this exercise, isn't it? I observe, I notice, I wonder. But in our work, it's just I observe and I notice professionally. So we're noticing and then reflecting back. I notice that actually you're shaking your head when I'm asking about naked breasts and naked nipples, and so my invitation is, say, perhaps let's just keep that off the cards, that that's not the place. And they go, oh yes, actually, yes, thank you. No naked breasts, no naked nipples, great. And then we can work with that. And then I share that back with the director and with the producer and with the costume department, and we go, okay, we've got breast covers. We can have a halter neck, swimming costume, so they can get the image of the naked back, the influence of nakedness, while that cast is completely personally taken care of. And again, what again we're looking to support, and this comes from working at Drama Centre and the wonderful Jack Malcolm, who would talk about bound flow and free flow.
Okay.
And what we're looking at is supporting the actor artistically to always be in free flow. Yes, that the character might feel awkward, the character might feel reticent, but what I'm looking at is seeing that the actor is in free flow.
Yeah.
Yes, so that they are personally really happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they can bring all their nuance to the character. Did that answer the question? I've completely
No.
lost it.
No, it absolutely did. Yeah, it answered so many questions, but it's fascinating. Everything you're talking about and every sort of side of it. I'm going, yes, yes, that's so important. And obviously, I want to get into a case study, but first of all, because we're here to talk about your book as well, and I can only just imagine sort of you know, living through all of this, experiencing all of this, working on all of these sets, how that clearly and fluidly led to the writing of a book, which is allowing everybody to, you know, explore intimacy and open themselves up.
So yeah, I mean, what's been lovely with the book is also just taking a step back, because it is for the everyday person, and having a journey through the book of acknowledging what our intimate scenes do for us, you know, what we draw from them. And the impact that the images that we see, what they have. So it's part of a bit of a rant, along with, you know, Emma Thompson and Kate Winslet, you know, and people like that. So it's both, you know, taking ownership and becoming conscious. So acknowledging, first of all, the intimate content that we see on scenes. It's so important. Our intimacy and how we love and who we love is a fundamental of who we are as human beings. You know, I'm so proud um, to help support making better intimate content so that we can see ourselves better. But it has that impact, you know, and then, you know, societies learn from whatever artistry is happening at the time. So in Shakespeare's day, people would go to plays. Many people couldn't read, so that's how they consumed their art. You know, sort of like you go into the Jane Austen novel, then you know the novel and how that happens, and anyway, and so that in that recognition, and then our time now is a time of screens. We're consuming how we recognize ourselves, how we reflect humanity back to itself, you know, on our screens, and you know, and obviously still on theatre and live performance. But then also even just with our screens and that shift, it's not just like what we considered long form, you know, TV program or a film. Then it's also just acknowledgement of our phones, how we're consuming our experience of life, and even shorter bursts in TikTok and Instagram. And that's a really, it can't, again, not to ignore that, because that's how our youngest people in particular consume, you know, how their entertainment, as it were. So all of that is to be acknowledged and understood. Um, and so first of all, the mirror. So as I'm saying, come on, let's, and the joy of being able to 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 make better intimate content, make anatomically better intimate content, invite more different shapes of body, invite periods, you know, and you know the reality of all those kind of things, so that we see better intimate content. But oh my goodness, again, through this, and directors, so many directors are also directors, writers, producers. Come on, everybody, write better intimate content. Because in a way, I think we've taken a step back. I looked at the work that I did at that point, sex education, and you know, Michaela's amazing writing
Yeah,
in
I mean
I
that
May
that that
Destroy You.
I May Destroy You, the period with the clot. I mean, I was speaking about it to all my friends, and I was like, yes, finally. You know, it's stuff that maybe you might have whispered to a friend occasionally. I was like, it is on screen, and oh, I felt so relieved.
But we need, where else is it?
More, we
Where
need
else is
more.
it? We need more. And again, her beautiful scenes of her sat on a loo, and while she's, you know, talking to the lovely Waruchi as a, you know, as a friend, and taking off a pad and replacing it, just that everydayness. And actually, when I was researching that, I actually found quite a few scenes where people were talking about sex on periods, but I couldn't find a single other one where they've had sex with a period. There have been some since. Actually, there was a period sex scene in Saltburn,
Oh yes,
although
cool.
it wasn't a loving. It's quite
No,
abusive.
it wasn't an empowering one.
No, it wasn't empowering. Um, but um, but yeah. And when I was reading it, and likewise, I was going, yes, yes, and the detail of it, and then the beautiful Mawan who played the character, and I was talking him through the beats of scene, and I was saying about wearing a tampon and then wearing a pad when it's a heavy flow. And goes, really, really, does this happen? You know, and it was just so glorious, and again hitting it right. So also, just I really want to do a big shout out again, just the whole creative team, because you know the choreography, the really clear choreography of the camera. So again, it was
Mhm.
told the right story but wasn't too in your face for an audience. And then the props department, you know, because if it had been too gross, it would have turned everybody off. And again, just the detail and the delicacy of how that clot was, how much blood, that all mattered, so that people could stay engaged and experiencing it, and being, as you're going, yes, empowering and going, finally we're seeing this, you know, that thing of I'm on my period, so I'll get a towel out and put it down on the sheet because I know that blood will be involved. It's not a bad thing, it's a beautiful thing. It has lubrication in a different way, you feel sexy in a different way. Anyway, so yeah, so we need more of that. So writing, you know, write better. And like as I was saying, I feel somehow there's a nervousness in people going, well, do we really need sex scenes? And so I feel in a lot of the scripts that I've been working on recently, come on, you know, write the scene. You know, I feel there's been a step back, quite a lot of scenes where it's kissing up to the point of sex and then cut to night after, which is also fine if it doesn't need that you know, that seeing the intercourse for whatever reason. But yeah, it's just a cool, you know,
Yeah, let's get
do we
meta.
need it? Do we need it? And if we need it, research it, really understand who these characters are. So it really is, as in Normal People, a beautiful part of the storytelling, pushing the storytelling forward. I'm watching the Narrow Road to the Deep North at the moment. And
Okay, I
yeah,
haven't
shout
started
out.
it yet.
It's a brutal watch. But I would also say that that there's some absolutely beautiful intimate scenes and really gorgeously raw and frisson. And anyway, so again, really can champion those intimate scenes, and congratulations to those intimacy coordinators. That's what we want,
Yeah,
is that gloriousness. Anyway, so the book,
so the book.
the mirror matters, that matters, yes. And so that we help to watch things that make us feel that how we are doing our intimacy, how we're right, you know, and we're not being sold something that is a myth.
Exactly. Yeah,
It really matters, which is why for us as intimacy coordinators, learning the anatomy of arousal and
yeah,
then working our damnedest, while we don't want to make every sex scene 20 minutes long, we do want to show that a woman needs lubrication, needs time to open up, all those sorts of things, so that how we are in our intimacy is you know, we're offering something that helps people to know the reality, which is where jumping forward in the chapter, the myth um and reality of sexual arousal. You
mhm,
know, with working with intimacy coordinators, I didn't know what happened internally. Um, um, you know, with the womb rising, you know, so again, rising and then opening the vagina, it goes from horizontal to vertical, and opening and engorging. So those kind of things, like, okay, that's why this is this, and that's why a woman needs this amount of time to be stimulated for the whole of the clitoris. Again, that understanding that actually the clitoris has as much, if not more, engorging tissue as the penis.
yeah,
And to know that, but of course most of it is internal, so those kind of things. So this book is sharing some of the detail of that, and then inviting and then, you know, stepping into, okay, what do I want?
yeah.
And again, for me, this is a big part of what I'm joyously sharing, is which again is, as I said, the shift in the industry with an actor, is in order to think about what you want, you need to be in your body and feel what you want. But that's a shift. That's a
Mm,
shift. And then to really go and again take responsibility. What do I actually want for my sensuality and my sexuality? What positions do work for me? As we hope here. Um, you know, this is the wonderful book that
there we
I,
go.
you know, and again, what's great about this, and the same with my work on set, is I don't want to bring emotion into it, you know, when I'm choreographing with an actor, but again, trying to think of what's an offer, what different shapes, you know, might you want. The glowing triangle,
Yeah,
uh, and, you know, the rocking horse.
yeah,
So so these kind of things, perhaps as you're getting older, perhaps you've, you know, you've had knee surgery, you're going, "Actually, I can't do that position anymore," but you can, so again, just being practical, so taking ownership. And then the next thing, which is a huge thing for me, is our body image. So once you've decided what you want and how you feel about yourself is a huge one, and, I am, I'm an advocate for being healthy, eating well, cooking well, and this whole slimming drugs does concern me at the
it's
moment.
terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying. And
Yeah,
there's people, you know, is looking at the award seasons and looking at some of the people who are up there going, oh my goodness.
Skinny's
And
back. The 90s are back.
this is it. And as Kate Winslet, God bless Kate Winslet, God bless Emma Thompson, God bless, you know, Judi Dench. Frances McDowell, Jane Fonda, all those people. There's not about not taking care of yourself, but being fit. I love, again, as I said, Jane Fonda's statement: when you're old, when you're young, being fit is a choice. As you get older, being fit is essential. If you want to have a long and active life, if you want to pick your shopping up, if you want to go playing with your grandkids, and there's no reason that we shouldn't into our 90s.
Mhm.
But it means being active on our bodies, but that's a joy. So again, so taking ownership of how you look. Yes, acknowledging what's out there. It's wonderful that they're there and they're wonderful dresses. And I was just doing that last night, flicking through, going, yeah, that dress is wonderful. Look at that.
Mhm.
But taking ownership, knowing what's out there is our entertainment industry, loving yourself. It's a
Yeah,
huge part so that then you can be in your sensuous body.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, feeling your body. And then again, a big part of that, and again, big part of what I'm sharing is that we are beings of this world. We are made of earth, air, fire, and water. And again, it was a big part of my movement practice, which I love sharing. But for everybody, our health is staying embodied and staying connected with the natural world. And again, um, the idea of boundaries in our everyday lived life.
Mhm.
For me, it's no point in vilifying something. Our computer, AI, ChatGPT, God bless it. As a writer, as a dyslexic person, sort of, I know I have a cat-handed way of saying things. I would talk into it, and then it flips it into a lovely structured sentence. So I'm
Thank you.
using it as a wonderful tool. So let's
It's
not
a tool.
vilify.
That's what I always say. It's a tool.
Yeah. And for our young people, how do we, and particularly parents of young people, how do we help them to know that their phone is a tool? How do
Mhm.
we help them to acknowledge how it draws you in, what it does to you, how it's using your psyche? So again, you're teaching your kids their boundaries. I don't sleep with my phone by my bed
Mm.
because I know I don't want that energy. So
Yeah,
again, and so how do we teach our kids to have boundaries to say to their friends, I will be on my phone until 9 o'clock and then I put it down.
yeah,
Um, so and staying in contact with nature and staying in connection with our sensuous body, and then the idea of communication, dancing,
yeah.
dancing, frisson, and then into a lifetime of intimate relationships. Again, acknowledging that we're so much sold that our sex is for our young people. No, it's
Mhm.
not.
No, not
No,
at
it's
all.
not. Our sensuality and our sexuality, that's the pinnacle, that's the beginning. And actually, what do we know? As we gradually know our bodies, as we know our partners, things shift and change, but also acknowledging, we have a baby, our body's changed. We've given our breasts that have purely been for pleasure into feeding another beautiful human being. It's a gorgeous thing. How all those sorts of things. So just acknowledging that. And then the last bit that I'm really the idea of as I said, really claiming and owning who we are, particularly our women um, into their older years. So the idea that we are the enchantress, yes,
Love that.
and this point postmenopausal where we're finally out of the cycle of our menstrual hormones. We have wisdom, we have sass, we have energy, we have beauty, we have understanding of life, and it's a wonderful time before we then go into being an older woman or a granny. So again, owning this and we really have such wonderful role models now. Gillian Anderson, as we were talking about, the wonderful Gillian Anderson,
Yeah.
so many people, Frances McDowell, Frances McDormand, um, Jennifer Aniston, all these people who are now in this period and showing us,
Mm.
Greta Skarki going, come on, let's stop this grey wig syndrome of
Yeah.
characters. It's like, no, let's see our characters reflected on our screens who are empowered, who right the way through our 50s, 60s, even our 70s, we're still happening, vibrant, juicy and sexy. And to really invite everybody. And then the last thing is then intimacy into our older years. It doesn't
Yeah.
stop ever.
Yeah, I love that. I
Uh,
love that part.
Great. And yeah, again, having the joy of working with Rankin, supporting the Relate campaign, and these amazing images. I would say to anybody, please go and find them because they were so joyous, real lived couples into their 70s, 80s, 90s, and just reminding us of that joy of our sensuality and our sexuality into our older years.
Yeah. Fabulous. It's that transition, we're watching films, we're watching TV, and you want to be inspired, you want to see lives, and you think, oh wow, that's wonderful. And then I think, you know, your book is something you're like, well, you can have that. You can
Yeah,
have this intimacy. It's not something that is exclusively for TV or the screen. This is life, and that's what people want to see replicated, and they want to mirror that. And
that's
it's
right.
yeah, it's linking it all together, I think, is so important.
And that's where, sort of, what Gillian Anderson has done, and again, which has come from sex education, from people contacting her, inspired by her character,
Yeah,
and that merging into real life and her really taking that, and, it's gorgeous talking to her about that offer for women to write their stories and the responsibility, and that she felt in curating these stories, and how what a positive and wonderful thing it is. Again, it's taking ownership. No, this is ours. My body is mine.
yeah.
My impulse is mine to consider what I want, and then to communicate it. And it's not selfish. Just as I'm you was talking about that flip from an actor feeling, how can I, my students used to say, how can I go to a director and say this, and I'm saying, no, flip it. It's like,
Mm,
you want to bring the best of yourself to this intimate content, and the way that you can do this with open communication, with
yeah.
agreement and consent and clarity of choreography. And it's the same in our everyday lived lives. Take responsibility. What do I want? Share it, talk about it, and explore it. Again, if you need, you need to use more lubrication. If need to use different intimate toys, great. And that's, like I say, there's so many different places. You don't just have to go to Ann Summers. Maud is one that I'm really championing, and again, from having had the connection with Dakota Johnson. Um, yeah, just taking responsibility, and knowing that we can lift the lid of a Victorian way,
Yeah,
really embrace what we want. And I hope that, yes, and that this book can help support you do that.
absolutely. Yeah, there's so much in there. And what I want to talk about now, so I want to go, there's a case study in your
Mm,
book, which I loved. So Keep Breathing, the short
mm.
film by Mark Corden. I hadn't seen the film before. And I was fascinated. So I want to dig into this to you. So going back to sort of directing this, and there was something that I wanted to explore is like the geometry of intimacy. And you know, it's in a tiny space. And so I don't know, for people who might not have seen the film, if you could give us a little introduction that sort of sets the scene, and then I'd love to dive into sort of specific things so we could apply that practice.
So this is, again, just that's wonderful written piece by, so that it was the writer was also played the lead character, and it's from their lived experience.
Yeah.
So again, that duty of care of what do you offer from your lived experience, and how do you offer it up in art, and how do we safeguard? So that was the premise of that, and both the lead actress and the director approached me way before they started doing it, and I said the best thing that you can do is to come to a weekend workshop, so that you can learn the process of the intimacy onset guidelines, and then we can all work openly together, really understanding the process. So that's what they did. And again, as Michaela Cole's story, this is about the grey area of consent.
Yeah.
Um, it's very clear when it's a really aggressive and abusive, challenging, intimate moment. And again, as I make it really clear, anytime that that there's abusive content, it's not about love; it's about power,
Mm.
and recognizing that. Um, so this story is about these two characters that they meet up in a lift. They'd had a lovely evening where they'd got together, and then, as far as the lady was concerned, that was the end of it. And come home in the taxi, and she thinks, well, that's it, thank you very much, and she goes to the door, but he's followed her, and he has an expectation that it is going to go further. And then the story depicts again that grey area, and that coercion, and her saying no, and then the coercion, um and what the reality of that is,
Yeah.
rape, and and when they meet back up, she sort of helps um, the person who she had been with to understand that actually she hadn't given her consent. It hadn't been a yes, and that he had taken perhaps her silence as a consent, and he wasn't picking up that actually he wasn't seeking a freely given consent, and the shock, and how that will make him consider. Um, Yeah, so that's a fundamental story, and again, it's so important. And in fact, I know that then that has been used in schools to help raise, or to raise that story, to look at those situations, and to help a conversation
Yeah.
to be around that.
But there's all the layers in it. So as you're talking about consent and feeling comfortable, and was it something that everyone agreed to? It's in a lift, this conversation. And I just thought it was fascinating. Like, you could feel the tension between them. You could feel that, how uncomfortable that was. And all of that is intimacy as well, and directing that. So I'd love to, for you to talk a bit more about that, because it's not just, I think maybe people might think it's just the sex or it's just the physicality, but it's also the connection between those two, and the space between them.
That's right. That's as I say in the book, that sort of when you're looking at intimacy, it's a whole arc of intimacy, both
Yeah.
that arc and going into intimacy, um, and but then the tension of intimacy and the space between. It's lovely, yes, that's the thing of the space between, the power of the space between. Um, so all the stuff in the actual lift, I wasn't present for it.
Okay.
'Cause there was no touch, but
Yeah,
I had done the work with the director
absolutely.
and the lead actress around, the guidelines and a process and protocol, um, yeah, so that was something that was supported by the director, but I absolutely was there for all the work in the bar, and then through into the taxi, and that was an interesting one, into the taxi. So choreographing that really clearly. But obviously there wasn't space for me to be there, so again, you're looking at putting in place a really good frame, everybody knowing what's happening, and then they're going, yeah, yeah, really happy. And then of course they're driving around with the camera, and the director sat in the taxi with them, but there's no space for me. But again, all of all of those aspects are about having, doing that really clear table work that you've
Yeah,
done.
yeah, yeah,
Look,
yeah. It's the preparation. It's
all the
so that
preparation.
you're not in that physical moment, but everything you've done is around it.
But this is it, and people say to me, "So what do you do on what's the day on set like?" And I'm going, Literally, the day on set is the tip of the iceberg. Everything
Mhm.
else, just as with a really good fight or a really good dance, it's all in that whole journey, it's based on all of that open communications and talking, clear choreography, agreement and consent, connecting with the costume department so that everything's provided, providing genitalia cushions if that's what's needed for rehearsals. All of that is done beforehand. Are you aware that that little film was the film that, because the Guardian came to me and said, we'd like to film you at work, and because yes, it was a short film, and because I'd had a really good relationship with the director and
Yeah.
writer and actress, that was a suitable place for me to say, are you happy then for that sort of this observing camera to also be there, but also we will make sure that, again, we rehearse things first so they know what's happening. What we're making sure of a closed set is making sure that that initial agreement and consent, that initial choreography where people don't know what they might be happy with, where we're asking them, and that place of vulnerability when you're navigating that agreement and consent, that's where it's absolutely behind closed doors, where
Yeah.
it's only the minimum people, and that's what we're putting in place throughout the whole industry. And only when someone's gone, yeah, I now know what the shape is, I know what the choreography is, that it's bish bash bosh, I'm now happy to take that on set. That's what you're looking for, and again, that's what we were working with the cameraman. So have you seen the Guardian video?
Yeah, no, I have, and that's why I wanted to speak about it in this, because there's, as I said, there's so many different layers to it. Yeah, I was watching that.
So again, I love working with storyboards. Some directors
Mhm.
do it, some don't. But again, when a director has storyboarded it, the clarity that it brings is fabulous, because of course everybody has a different image in their mind as to what the words might mean. But when you have the storyboard, it's really great, and not just shows the shape of something, but also what the camera angle is of it. So
Yeah.
so that's where you can have the influence of intercourse happening, but if the shot's just from their shoulder blades up, then they can be with tracksuit bottoms and
Mhm.
cushions in between, and but you're still getting the beautiful sensuousness. So and again, I was watching a shower scene, and they'd had a long shot where the character had taken off his clothes, taken off his trousers, and so full naked back body as he walks into the shower. And then you have the other character coming and joining and taking off their clothes, but from then it's only from the waist up. So, and we don't need to see the whole body
Yeah, of
again
course.
because they've told the audience this is what the storytelling is. And I know as an intimacy coordinator, they're going, great. Well, they can be having their, swimming costumes, long johns, whatever they want on the lower body to
Yeah.
keep them comfortable, because then it's all in the upper body. And so those kind of things are what we're looking at. And again, Elle was really clearly telling that, when I listened to her talk about they work with all of those amazing supporting artists in Poor Things.
Things, yeah.
Sort of, if you notice that when they come in and the nakedness that they come to, but when it was actually the intimate scenes, actually it was generally two shot from waist up. So but that's and again, that's good artistry. You've told the audience a story, they've taken on board this is what the physicality is that we're being told is happening, but then in the performance of it for those actual people, then that's where you're always having an artist as dressed as you can, and you're only having them exposed for what's needed on camera. And again, that gives an ease. Again, in the past there wasn't that care taken, but now that's what we can put in place.
Yeah.
And again, everything's for the camera, so that's what we're sort of, it helps the artist to really know that this is a job and it's professional and they're taken care of, and it's not gratuitous. So what's been asked of them isn't gratuitous.
Yeah. And you're not just asking for the sake of asking. So you're not going, right, this is a sex scene, so you need to be naked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you said there, the artistry of it, that's what's so important. And that's what people who might still be a bit hesitant might be, oh, I know I don't need that, or I know what I'm doing is, well, think about the artistry of it. Think about that side of it. It's
It's
bringing such an it's never going to take away. It's always going to add. It's going to add texture, volume, artistry, everything.
But also to say that and as an artist and as an actor myself, and an actor as a dancer, what you do want to create is you don't lock something down so completely that there's no room within the arc or the shape of the choreography for for the artist to be on impulse, to be free. And actually it is that thing that personally checking out. And again, one of the questions that you asked was about that shift from boundaries to requirements.
Yeah.
And that's what early days, that realizing that a boundary is a no, is a stop, whereas this is what I require in order, this is what I require in order for me to be free, open, easy, and give the best of myself. It has such a different energy to it. So and I love that. So it brings the positive. So when you've listened to someone's requirements regarding touch, and again, we just don't know what this work is also doing, is giving a structure, particularly at that point when there's agreement and consent, because we just don't know, and we don't know sometimes ourselves.
Yeah.
The couple of times, like when I had someone saying, can I touch your ears? They're going, yes. And then she goes, oh, no. Or can I stroke your hair? And we've done that. And whoa, and they've come to tears. They
Yeah.
had no idea that move was actually bring back past life
Yeah.
memory.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important that bit is done in the closed set, so nobody's made vulnerable. But once it's like, yeah, but and like um amazing actor, and again, someone who was really clear and had that presence with themselves and presence with their partner. Because that's also a huge impact on an artist, is how their partner feels about this work and how they feel about this. So when they're able to again go, we're now working through this personally or professionally. So this artist had gone back and they'd spoken to their partner. They came back and they said to me, my agreement is that I do not touch or kiss anybody else's nipples or breasts, and nobody touches or kisses my breasts or nipples. Really clear. You're going, great, we
Yeah.
can do that. And then we choreograph within that. But again, big advocate of lovely Mike Alfred's different every night. Yes. So you want to give a shape, you want to give clarity, you want to give agreement and consent of touch. But then within that, then and invariably when I first create a structure, I'll be counting because I come from being a dancer, and kissing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, coming down, kissing down the body, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever. So
Yeah.
I do that a couple of times so both people have a sense between it, and then I'll go, now forget about the brick beats. Now just let let it go,
Yeah.
and not be on impulse, be free. But there's already a frame within which they can be free.
So something I wanted to speak to you about, and I sort of had marked down, is the aftercare with the director. So you've spoken a lot about working with actors and their consent, but yeah, I'd love to know how you navigate that side of it and making sure that they feel safe and that that everything is gone right, really.
So absolutely brilliant to bring this awareness and bring this conversation. So this work, and again, the concern early days was it would take away, take over from the director,
Yeah,
and that's why in all my check-ins with a director, first of all, I'm going, tell me how you like to work, tell me what you want from me, so that you're taking care of and again, everybody works differently. So it's finding that out first and developing that open communication, transparency with them, and then finding out what their vision was, what they want. So first of all, I hope it's that ease of the director being able to go, oh, this is really an ally for me. This is really a practitioner who is coming and is supporting me to act, to be the communication, to be the conduit with not just the actors, but with all departments, sound, camera, um, costume, so important, makeup, the second AD, or organising timing so that it's all going to run smoothly. So giving them, sort of professional ease and structure. I worked with a director colleague, and early days, but when the intimacy coordination happened, um but they were doing a scene that was actually a challenging intimate scene, and they didn't have an intimacy coordinator. No, it's fine, I can do this. And so they checked in with the actor beforehand, and they sort of made sure that they was all really clear, and then the day on set they held the space really well, and it was, they absolutely got what they wanted, and afterwards they went and made sure that they were okay. But that director said to me afterwards that she spent so much of her energy in that wraparound care. Whereas since having worked with an intimacy coordinator, they realised actually that concern can be communicated, but then that's what the intimacy coordinator can take off, you know, the emotional psychological check-in with the actor,
yeah,
um, um, and that duty of care, putting in place everything around so that that director can absolutely bring the best of themselves
yeah.
as the director. Yes, and can be clearer and more focused in really getting what they want, because that's all they have to do, while also knowing that that relationship with their intimacy coordinator means that that wraparound care is happening, particularly around challenging and abusive intimate content.
Mm,
Um, so that's that. And then, whenever there is challenging intimate content in particular, as the intimacy coordinator will have identified that risk, and invariably then the therapeutic side of it is that we're saying we can, part of our skill is we're recognizing and seeing, and perhaps in sort of someone's possible distress or activation in the body around a particular subject matter, and or they might have shared something of their past lived experience with us. um, so to know that we need to bring in an artist wellbeing practitioner who can then bring that emotional and psychological artistic support. And again, artist wellbeing practitioners, they come from the therapeutic training, but they are trained in understanding and knowing what the demands are of an artist, so they can be present on set. So whatever preparation, what they need to do for their personal lived experience, there's techniques, there's language, there's so many different things that they help support them. So I will have brought that in, and it might be that it's the director that needs that, yes, as much as perhaps it's a producer or the cast, or it might be the DOP, or it might be someone in the costume department that needs that. But so that's what we're bringing in, and so that's part of what's on offer as well for the director.
yeah,
And then and then in that holding of the shooting of it, again, we're serving their vision, and again, I'm checking in with the director as about noting. And sometimes the director goes, no, I want all the notes to come to me and I will give them. And then sometimes I'll check in, I'll go, okay, in that intercourse, he was just rocking his upper body, there was no energy in his pelvis. Do you want to? He goes, no, I don't know what I'm talking about, you go and give that note.
mm,
No, so you're checking in. So again, you're helping the director to know that everything's being served for their vision, and that relationship there. And then that closure at the end. So I will check in with the director, and say we'll do a high five, invariably we'll do a hug,
Mhm.
and checking in with the director, how they want to be part of that. So invariably, they'll just come forward and go, "Well done, guys. Well, done." Particularly if it's an abusive intimate scene, and I share some of the techniques that I use. So again, a high five and a hug is just fundamental. People instinctively do it, but then also particularly letting go. So sometimes we'll stand on set, we'll ask everybody to step away, and again, this needs to be negotiated because invariably, as soon as wrap on thing onto rehearsals for the next. So
Yeah,
again, sharing is we need a moment. We need a
yeah,
moment. Everybody step out. And I've put this in place. We've gone the actors and the director. Let's come together. Let's have a hug and let's consciously use a technique to get rid of this. So possibly using the waterfall standing, honouring yourself, thanking yourself, and the use of names is so important. So when you're stepping in character, using character name, but then when it's finished, then you come back to self.
mm,
So those names really help someone's. And again, Elle is so brilliant at holding this and understanding this. Your nervous system, the frisson and the energy of the nervous system doesn't know whether it's real life or pretend. But that's where if you've that's where and again I do say to actors, choose rhythms and choose something that's so completely not you, so that your whole body, the character name, and then this way of being is so wrapped up in that. Yeah. So then when you come back to being me, and then you're going, thank you, me, thank you, artistic me, for being honoring and giving this. And then let's step back, let's wash that away, let's let it go. Even if you're going to step back into that character using those techniques, let's wash away, where we've been with all that energy, particularly it's abusive energy, and again, that realization that in abusive intimate content where you're dealing with the perpetrator and the victim, which is back to my R&D, sort of course, you're aware of what the person who's playing the victim is experiencing, but actually is also, as what the person who has to step into being the perpetrator,
mm, mm.
um, an offering of themselves, because invariably our lovely artists and actors are beautiful and gorgeous and creative and caring artistic people, otherwise they wouldn't be in this profession. So what it takes of that person, I did an abusive intimate scene that the director, that was really quite full on. We had a particular rhythm. The director went, I want further, I want more, I want harder. And and they really went there. And that actor, when I checked in, then they go, I've done so much of this, I'm fine. But in the filming of it, and he went, thank you, it's really nice to be asked.
Yeah,
Am I okay?
yeah, yeah. It's just checking in, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah.
what you said, and what you said at the beginning and in during rehearsals, that might have changed. That might have
That's
developed.
right. That's right. That's right. And anyway, and then at the end, so again, so just checking with the director, do they want to be included in that waterfall, letting go, resetting, stepping back, go outside again, walking barefoot, or go and have a fag, whatever it is you need, let some sun on your face, reset, ground, re-pick up character, re-pick up right next scene, and off you go. And
Yeah,
those kind of techniques can take like 5-10 minutes, but they are so valuable, and so important for just having that check-in personally, and yeah, just that journey of who you are personally with what you're offering artistically, um, and yeah, and helping it to be a really robust journey throughout the day. And then part of that is also the cast being able to see playback. Um, yes, that's another whole thing. Shall I
yeah,
go there?
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I
Um,
can. Yeah,
So again, sharing with the director, it's really important that a cast member has the opportunity to see their intimate content
hmm,
before it goes out into the world. So
hmm,
there's three places that can happen. They can see playback as we're filming. So again, some actors really like that. Some actors go, don't want to see it. I need to stay in my character.
yeah,
Some directors don't want it. They'll say it slows up the day. And again, it completely depends on what the relationship is with the director and the cast. Like very often, if it's the cast is also executive producer and they have that kind of relationship, then it's an easy thing. That it's an ease that they will come back and they'll see it and they'll in a way co-direct themselves together and then they'll go back. So again, you're just checking it out. So that's one place. Another one, which is the rushes are prepared and the cast can come and see it the next day that they're in, so they can just see it all and know that they're happy with what's been captured. And then the third one is that they can see the rough cut of the edit once the director's done the director's cut.
yeah.
And very often I actually think that that's a really positive place to see it, because there's distance, and also the shots that have been chosen, um, um, yeah, have the sort of shape of what the director wants in the production, and so yeah, and again, it's, I have to be really clear that I'm supporting that process, but it's for a dialogue between the director, or the director and the cast, and possibly the producers. And it's for the cast to be able to see their nudity and their simulated sexual content, so that they're not made vulnerable by suddenly seeing something when it's gone out into the world and they haven't had that opportunity to
Yeah.
know how what they've offered of their nudity and their simulated sexual content has been used in the serving of this storytelling.
Yeah. I mean, I think I find it bonkers that you'd be so involved in the process, with those rehearsals and with talking it all through. And then, of course, the importance, of course, they need to see that, because how it's going to look on screen is going to be different to how it was prepared. And that's just so interesting. It's something that I would have thought would have been automatic, but it's not. It needs to be put into place.
That's right. For a cast member to have that access is not, um, hasn't been offered. It's
Yeah,
like
it's not a
once
given.
you've offered it, yeah. And so it's really important that that's part of what is in those early negotiations, and particularly supported with, that open conversation, actually more than with the directors and the intimacy coordinator and the producer, that were
Yeah,
saying, this is what we put in place. Do you support this? What works for you?
yeah.
And some go, no, no, no. Once they've given that, then it's ours. Which is also where early days, the contracts, and on one of the productions that I worked on, in 2018, the first production that I worked on, that was a collaboration with America, and I was up in the middle of the night renegotiating these contracts that had been there forever, like things like, if the cast doesn't want to perform this and we get a body double, the double can do any degree of nudity and any degree of simulated sexual content. It's like, no, that can't happen. Um, so that's where it's so important you've agreed with the cast. This is the choreography, this is the degree of nudity, and if a body double steps in and does it, they have to stick to what's been pre-agreed with the main cast of the nudity and of the simulated sexual content. So that was a fight. That was new. And then the bottom clause used to say, once the actor has given this content, it's the ownership of the production, and they can do whatever they want with it. It's like, no. No,
No.
what keeps the actor safe is that nudity and simulated sexual content is, um, in honour and in service of the arc of the storytelling. And when it's in its place, that nudity, that simulated sexual content is telling that emotional and psychological story of this character. That's what, both that's what I've brought into the industry with what keeps the actor safe.
Mhm.
People say to me, if is it, what happens when it's a gratuitous intimate scene? Well, as you can hear, when we do that actor director process, interrogating, why is that scene there? How's it pushing the storytelling forward? If those questions can't be answered as to why that scene's there and how is it pushing the storytelling forward, it very soon becomes obvious it's a gratuitous scene and it's out.
Yeah,
Doesn't happen.
yeah,
And that's what keeps the actor safe, is being full of character, storytelling, beats of the scene, and then they've got all of that to serve, which stops it from being just, I'm a vulnerable person just being naked and doing simulated sex, and then equally, then that's what it's in service of, is the arc of the storytelling when it goes out into the world. And so that's the only point that it should be used.
mm,
Um, and if the production do want to use any stills from it or any videos from it in promotion or anything, then they have to come back and seek agreement and
yeah,
consent from that cast member.
yeah.
And that's so important, and that didn't used to be there. But again, that protects the cast member.
It's huge. I think a lot of people might assume that that doesn't need to be spoken about, but it does, and it
It
needs to be
does.
made clear.
Because again, the frisson and the images of sex and nudity sells. And
Mm, true. Yeah, it's a
I had a
draw.
lovely cast member, and again, early days, and as you can imagine, all of these things that have been put in place are gradually from, me, being on set, and like with the likes of Elle and Kat in those early days, going, and as I said, particularly with sex education, I said, look, I have developed this work. I've been teaching it in drama schools. Um, and I've been teaching, days workshops or weekend workshops in the industry, but I haven't before then actually delivered this on set. So you and I, we need to work together to work out how it works.
Yeah,
And again, that's where, there's mistakes were made and conversations, had too late. If you want to change, you want to make sure that there's gender parity in the crew. When there's, a heterosexual sex scene, if you haven't taken care, it might be that there's a man and a woman performing and nothing but a male crew. And suddenly that lone woman who's taking her clothes off in front of nothing but male energy is incredibly vulnerable making. So we're trying to make sure that there's gender parity in the crew, but you can't suddenly say, well, the first AD suddenly has to be a woman if there's no female first AD around who can support that. So
Yeah.
again, it has to be considered in good time so that they have time to get the right people in anyway. So all of these things that I'm speaking about came from, as it were, mistakes happening or things not going well, and looking at when does the conversation need to happen, when, in good time, so that not just the actor or the director, but the producer and the whole production, it all is thought about in good time and it all runs smoothly, so that the day on set, again, you know is smooth and supported.
Yeah. And then sort of, and this is something that, I've wrote down and, I want to talk to you about is so there's going to be a future of embodied directors. They know what they're doing, that they understand, because they will be working like this all the time.
Yes, I hadn't
And
thought about that, but yes, I
yeah,
know perfectly. And the joy, I mean, it really is, as I said, the joy that you can engage with this part of the storytelling, now that the guidelines are there, equally creatively, openly, excitedly.
yeah, 100%. I want to go back to, so you were talking about the waterfall exercise, and thinking back to the book, there's some brilliant sections in there where you talk through exercises, where you sort of allow the reader, a view into what you'd be discussing on set. And were they just really obvious things that you knew you wanted to include?
So what I was really excited when I got offered this, because I said, was to share actually, that this is the work concept, this is what I offer to you in real life, but the fundamental of what underpins what I've been able to create and offer with the intimacy guidelines is my movement practice.
Yeah.
And the various different tools from that. And as you can see throughout the book, I speak about amazing people that I've worked with or had the joy of done workshops, like Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen, who developed body mind centering, or Jill Peirce, who's developed the overtone chanting, but that connects with voice and sound. Um, so so yeah, and how each of these are sort of really good tools that I use both to support the actor, but actually are really great tools to support yourself. So, for example, the first one is 20 connected breaths.
Yeah.
It's such a simple exercise. We breathe all the time, but actually our breath is so profound when we then consciously work with it to change our rhythm, our energy, how we feel in ourselves. So literally just 20 connected breaths. It takes 2 minutes, but it can be so profound. And like I say, I have used it instead of kids coming in and they're really excited from something, trying to say settle down, be quiet. Don't do any of that. Sit down, hands on your knees, connect with your breath, and they open. By the end of the arc of 20 breaths, you're in such a different place. And it's yeah. So it's such a tool for anything. So one of the things you asked about, the questions about, what are sort of perhaps some exercises to help direct it. So again, a director is on it. When they're filming, they're holding that art. So and they're holding everybody, and everybody's looking and asking them. So I'm so aware of how amazing it is, the tenacity of that a day's energy that a director needs to have on set, and then, oh my goodness, doesn't end there. Then they go home and then they're head down into what's the script for tomorrow, and so little things like this, 20 connected breaths, are a lovely one. Um, that sense of being in your body and being grounded. In between being a dancer and being an actor, I actually was trained as a holistic massage therapist, on-site massage therapist, and reflexologist, because I thought I was going to go and be an alternative therapist, and then I had an epiphany and went, no, I've got to go back and be an actor. But the connection with the feet is so important, and our feet are so amazing. So again, I share a whole load of different ones about the feet. So just walking barefoot, again, as a little sort of break between one part of your day to the next, walking barefoot. And this is for everybody. If you're at work, you're at lunchtime, just go outside, take your shoes and socks off, and go and walk barefoot on the grass. again, just that groundingness, just that breath, and sending those roots down. Massaging of the feet, oh my goodness, again, takes like 5-10 minutes. It's such a wonderful reset to bring yourself down, to release. And there's 4 layers of muscles and tendons on the underside of the feet that come up and connect across the knee joint up into your thigh. And then the muscles from your coccyx come and come actually across the knee joint and connect into your tibia. So actually massaging the feet really has a profound effect on your posture right up your body,
Yeah.
and just the difference of how your feet feel, that like you're walking on clouds. So there's things like that. And also to really say that my intention is, I hope that this then can be a book that you dip into, but I really wanted to have the exercises accessible so that you're not just reading them. So on the audiobook,
Hmm.
there's some exercises that are for you to do, perhaps with your partner. So like how to ask, um, at the end of a lifetime of relationships is there, that you would, just check in with your partner. There's also, I'm so proud of this, age appropriate books for parents at the end of the sex education. So those obviously are there, but all the exercises on the audio book that are to do physically, they're underscored as music.
Yeah.
So if you want to be talked through, to put your AirPods in, yes, and I can talk you through the massage of the feet, or I can talk you through one of the next ones, regarding the sensuous body. This wonderful group of exercises called the 8 Silken Movements. And
Yeah.
I was taught them when I trained in on-site massage, and I've used them ever since. That was in sort of 1995, and when I actually was researching for this book, I found out that they're 2,500 years old.
Oh,
This
wow.
and they're just so simple, series of stretches, and again they're for everyone. So, and I have taught them where, some you can be sat in a chair, or an old person, and you can adapt them to, or an older person to whatever. I love this one. One of the ones that's very great fun is punching with angry eyes, where and I love it that the wonderful Hazel Mead, who's done all the drawings, has equally done this, the lovely cat with it's equally angry eyes. um so there you go. So I hope those have inspired you. Yeah, they're I chose exercises that were very accessible for the
Yeah.
everyday person.
Yeah.
And yeah, to really give you practical tools instead of, oh yes, next one, which is a really lovely one that I absolutely developed in preparation for my R&D, is the power of no.
Ah, yes, of course. Yes, but no.
So calling your boundaries. And so with that one, it's just talking you through sounding into each of the energy centers. So like right from your base center, sounding into it, so you activate it, and then say no from it, exploring the no. Because, and again, my exploration is that our no is a gift to ourselves and to others.
Mm.
But we're so much taught that no is a negative thing, and actually it's not. And again, that's part of my realization on set, is that you haven't truly invited agreement and consent where your requirements is that this is not suitable for you. Then you can't trust the yes. So, but we need to practice our no. And so this is energy, exploring our no from the base, from your belly, from your solar plexus, from your heart, from your throat, from your mind, and from your top of your head, and realizing, just exploring the different qualities of the no.
Yeah.
It just helps you to have that as part of what's literally in your being, and exploring the different no's. So that's also a very exciting exercise. I'm really really happy to share with everybody.
Yeah. There's so much, and it's just, I think it's just opening it up. It's not, with intimacy, what you're doing on set. It's not this mysterious, shrouded practice. It's open, and this, if it can just be brought into so many different areas of life, we just open communication. That's what it all goes back to, isn't it?
No, yes. As I was reading, I was really reading the last bits, and again with intimacy into our older years, and
Yeah.
and again exploring. So I was highlighted by a colleague of mine, is a queer woman, who's now into their 80s, and they were saying that they were the generation that really were pushing the boundaries
Mm,
right throughout the whole of their life. So they were born sort of the 1940s.
right. Yeah.
And they were saying going into old people's home, they're again having to push the boundaries of, the old people's home being happy that their partner, who is a fellow woman, coming and being with them and perhaps staying with them overnight. And
Yeah.
that really prompted me to look into how our old people are supported in their intimacy
Yeah.
into the older years, and yeah, and just again that open communication and that aspect. So I found this wonderful study, and they're saying that how our old people are in their sexuality is as much a human right as what they need to eat and what exercise they need. It's like, wow, great. But
Yeah.
that means again that open communication at that point in life, and that again is challenging if you've got your adult children, wanting to talk to the people who are running the old people's home about your, your parents' human rights, which might include, as I said, Ethel needing some new batteries for her vibrator. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, but again, but that's joyous, isn't it? It's sort of let's keep that
Oh, yeah.
conversation going.
Yeah. And I want to see more of that on screen. So,
Yes,
yeah. Why don't we have those kind of sex scenes, that representation? And as you were talking earlier, you want to see new writing coming out. There's a responsibility to storytelling, isn't there?
that's right, really is. I'm about to go and do a trans awareness day at Warner Brothers on Friday, and again, that's so wonderful, because so that there's again more trans stories. I think our storytelling has got better with queer male and queer female stories, but now, come on, that rainbow of experience that people from the trans community, in their lived experience of life, is so important that let's get more stories about the trans community out there.
Yeah. Absolutely. The more stories we can tell and tell them in the right way, that's what's being done now.
That's right, and I keep championing again. Um, I've worked with so many wonderful female writers, queer writers, queer directors, queer female directors. But oh my goodness, how many of them are actually really championed and really supported when it comes to our award season? Um,
Not
um,
enough.
no, it's. I mean, the proportion of how many people are out there doing it in comparison to them, are they represented in the award season? No, it's still jobs for the boys.
Oh, yeah, there's still so much work to be done.
Which
So
is
much.
I don't know if you're aware, I've been involved with the lovely Hedda and Anne Smith, who you've interviewed
Yes.
for Girls on Film, and I sponsor, or I have sponsored for the last several years, the Girls on Film Best Intimacy Award. Um,
Do you know
and
what? I hadn't put those two together. Yeah, I did an interview with Anna Smith. I love everything she does. I think it's
I listened
brilliant.
to her. Yeah, it was a great interview.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's where their awards are so important,
Oh,
because
they're brilliant.
these major films and what major female sort of like female composers, the female directors, that it's championing the women, and it's so important
Yeah.
because they so often get overlooked.
Yeah.
And yeah,
More of that.
before we go,
Go.
can we just have a little bit of a rift on how important it is that we have positive sex education in our schools,
Yeah.
and then the role of the intimacy on
Yeah.
set guidelines there.
You know what? I wasn't going to close without speaking about that because
Yeah.
we know we spoke about it at the beginning. And again, it's sort of, I guess this has been the backbone of our discussion is how the intimacy set guidelines and how what you're doing on film or what you're doing on TV is so reflective and so important in every aspect of our world. So yes, please tell me about, I know you're bringing it into schools and it was at GCSE level.
So as I said, the inspiration came from, as I started sharing the guidelines, I always start a workshop with checking in with whoever's there. When have you worked with intimacy when it's being done well, when it's not being done well, and what you want to get out of the work? And the amount of people that would say to me, oh my goodness, I did Romeo and Juliet for GCSE drama, and that was the first time I kissed anybody. I was 14, and this director, who was a geography teacher, was saying, right, now kiss. And they had all their classmates round going, kiss, 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 things like that.
Yeah.
So realizing, of course, we need to bring the intimacy on set guidelines into our schools for all the, and again, it's, to support all the teachers, be they experienced directors or the PE or geography teacher who's been asked to teach drama. So they're all given this structure and these guidelines so they can work with open communication and give them a professional structure in order to engage with this intimate content. Um, so obviously GCSE and A-level drama, and then all of our drama clubs. Um, but then my realization is that unless that school has the bedrock and foundation of respect for yourself and consent, then actually just bringing that is like a sticking plaster. So I've developed, along with so was introduced to and I've been working with a wonderful lady called Siobhan O'Higgins, who has been part of the team that's developed what's called a sex education, um, training or awareness for kids in secondary schools called active consent.
Mhm.
And again, it turns it on its head, that awareness that actually our sex education, and still is the case, is fundamentally fear-based. That our kids are taught how not to get pregnant, how not to get an STD, instead of flipping it to going positive. How can we support ourselves to understand our wants, our needs, our desires, that our body is, wired for pleasure
Yeah.
and joy. That's why our sensuality and our sexuality and our, is, yes, it's of course it's a procreate, but actually the pleasure and the connection that we derive, and then our emotional connection with who we are, with yeah, it's all yes, you can just go and have a sexual encounter, physical, great, with two consenting adults, but then but then you're a consenting fellow human being. And again, that's where I'm so aware of our young people these days. You want to go and learn, and as I'm saying, you should go and learn, you should be curious.
Mm.
And for me, into my older years, I was going, I want to continue learning, as I connect with my body. But in the void of positive sex education out there, of course, and with the easy access to pornography, and also just the reverse, that also a kid on TikTok will so easily then be led to pornography, then seeing something that actually they don't want to see.
Yeah.
And very often they're seeing, as I say in the book, kids of 9 being shown images that are way beyond their physical understanding or their, where the body's ready to be, and the damaging effect on that. Um, and and so supporting, our young people to be able to call their boundaries around that, but there's no point in just saying don't look there unless they're
Mm.
given a viable and positive alternative. So again, I'm really important. Actually, the version in the newer book it's been updated, and gives, like I say, really positive, positive books. So first of all for parents, but then also for kids, and sites to go to, videos to go to. Um, where is it? So some TED talks, and then some sites to go to.
Yeah.
Um, so to give our kids alternatives, and it comes also from our parents. So it's hard, isn't it, to talk, which is why the books start from supporting parents
Mm.
to equip themselves to be able to have those open conversations with their kids, to help them nurture respect for themselves. And that's where I really feel for our young men and boys. Adolescence was wonderful, but you need to bring, people say, oh, we must show that in schools.
Yeah.
Don't show that in schools unless you've got a really wonderful facilitator who can open the conversation. Otherwise, what are all those boys thinking? That
Yeah.
what I'm being told, that's who I am. So everybody needs support to listen to themselves, to connect with themselves, to
Yeah.
have respect for themselves. And this needs to be right from infant school, I believe.
I
Yeah,
I totally agree. It's making that shape how you look at everything.
that's right.
But that's what you need, that sort of framework.
That's right. That's right. And if it starts from there, and listening to yourself, having a language to be
Mm.
able to ask for want in a respectful way. How you're going to ask to go to the loo from your teacher is different to how you're going to talk to your classmates out in the playground. But if we're nurturing that right from the get-go, then that's the bedrock of it. And then on that, you can build good sex education where you respect for yourself, opening out to a positive sex education. And as Siobhan O'Higgins says, good sex education doesn't ruin your child's innocence, it helps them preserve it.
Yeah.
And then that's where, for example, and I was so aware when my kids like GCSE, that rite of passage in that time, we were perhaps either going to Reading or Latitude Festival, and then it's so wonderfully depicted in the incredible film How to Have Sex, where
Mm.
it shows how I
Molly Manning Walker.
oh yeah, and again Cats supported, so they came to me
Yeah,
for their film, for their short film Good Thanks You.
yeah,
Anyway, so yeah, so proud of what Molly Manning Walker has done, but that shows how completely we need to be giving boundaries and a language to our young people before they finish their GCSEs, to be
mm,
able to listen to themselves, to be able to ask for what they want, to help everybody to understand that that a non-answer or a reticence does not mean that then that person is open to coercion. You know, to know that consent is only when someone's absolutely saying yes, you know, and you're seeking it out. And that film so beautifully highlights it. It's heartbreaking,
yeah,
but that we need to be equipping our young people before, so that they can have a language, they can
yeah,
listen to themselves, so that everybody can understand what consent actually looks like. Um, and that's what I, you know, so that's the, you know, part of my focus. As I said, you know, someone said to me, "What do you want for yourself in the next 20 years?" So developing all of this work in secondary schools is a big part of my intention,
mhm.
for what for one of the next aspects of what I want to be doing with the intimacy onset guidelines.
Incredible. There's so much to come, and I think I really am. I'm in awe of what you've done, what you've started. It's a movement, and it's people understanding, and I just think the different ways that it can span into our worlds, and and what we're seeing on screen. So people are seeing these things in normal people. That was one of the first people discussing it, and I'm like, but let's then talk about that in real life and how that reflects to you and your relationships.
Yeah, that's right.
Full circle.
That's right, full circle. Yeah, yes, yes, yes. Um, had the joy of doing a panel discussion at Sundance Film Festival, and Dr. Orna Goralnik was the chair, who's amazing psychologist who has a TV program, Couples Therapy, and the following morning after we'd had the conversation and we met up, and she had that realizing. She went, "Oh my goodness, I'm realizing the feedback loop of work of the
Yeah,
impact of intimacy coordinators when you work more openly, when you create better intimate content, when the
yeah,
frame within how you've made it has been positive respect, really telling detailed and gorgeous, you know, sort of different qualities of intimacy, how that goes out into the world, and then how that like you say, the feedback loop, how the people in the world can then understand themselves better in their intimacy, and how that feeds back. So absolutely.
yeah. Well, Ita, thank you so much.
Great place to finish. Thank you. Sarah, what a lovely, gorgeous, gorgeous conversation. Thank you.
No, thank you. I think it's just fascinating, and sort of hearing about your direct experience. And, you've been there and you've done it and what you've seen and how you're seeing it grow. It's just, and I'm just so excited to see what comes of it and everything else that develops and, the future and more embodied directors. That's what we want.
That's right. Embodied directors and
Yeah.
who embrace beautiful, gorgeous, embodied storytelling.
Yeah.